All right. So welcome. I will try to keep track of the chat and let people in if they are coming late. But if it's the two of us, we'll just be informal. So I am going to go ahead and I'm going to go back and forth between the slideshow and just talking. And so I'm going to go ahead and start the slideshow. Don't want to do that. Sorry. There we go. Why is it not giving me the option just to present? Sorry about this. Well, technical issues. I just want to present. I don't want to present and record. Sorry. I may do it this way with all the background if I can't figure out how to. There we go. There we go. All right. So hopefully you're in the right place. This is preschool learning with nature journals. First, before we begin, oh my gosh, did I just lose my tab? Sorry about this. Okay. Before we begin, we just wanted to do a quick land acknowledgement. I always like to center our human connection to the land, and knowing that I am coming to you from the traditional unceded territories of the Chinookan, Kalapuyan, Clascani, and Athabascan people, whose traditions and whose connections to the land we choose to honor when we do forest school programs. And now I know that when we are in a virtual space, we're not all coming from the same land. And so I invite you, yours might be very similar to mine because you are in Whidbey Island. If you want to add into the chat, or if you just want to shout it out, if you would like to do your own land acknowledgement or just, reflect on it on your own time, that works too. If you don't know yet kind of the history of your land, this is one website where you could get started and get some ideas of who has been on your land.
We work with the San Indian Nation here on Whidbey Island.
Great. All right. So let's move on to kind of our agenda of what we're going to do today. I'm going to let you know a little bit about me, and then I want to know a little bit about you and what you want to get out of our nature journaling session. We're going to talk a little bit about why I think nature journals are such an important piece of an outdoor school program. Then we're going to talk about just the basics of how to introduce journaling to preschoolers, how to choose your formats, what books to use when you're introducing things to children, how to set expectations and create a routine around journaling. Then we're going to talk about kind of subject specific or domain specific, how you might want to use journals in different ways depending on what you and the children want to get out of them. And then we'll just open up the floor to have time for you to ask any questions that might have come up during the session. And so a little bit about me is that I'm in my 30th year of early childhood education. I started out as a public school kindergarten and first grade teacher. I then transitioned to doing preschool within a public program within Even Start. Even Start, I don't know if you've heard of it or not. It's very similar to Head Start in that it's a free public preschool for low-income families. The difference is that Even Start follows children birth to age 8 rather than just the preschool specific years that Head Start does. I've been a museum educator, and I like to tell people that I never set out to be an exclusively outdoor forest school program. I knew I wanted to start a preschool. And I knew I wanted it to be child-centered. I knew that I really wanted it to be inquiry-based, but I just kind of lucked into the outdoor forest school part of it. When I wanted to start the preschool, I sent out little missives, little questionnaires, kind of asking people, do you have a space where I can do this? Do you have maybe a mother-in-law cottage, some sort of shed that you're not using? And I ended up, my first location was a converted barn right on the edge of the Wildwood Trail, which is about a 30-mile trail that snakes through about 364 acres of our temperate rainforest here in the Pacific Northwest. And once I had that location, it was more of an idea of, okay, well, now I have to fantastic location that I've been gifted. But I really didn't know what I was doing. And so, I share that story because, it sounds like you're already outdoors. A lot of people are not already outdoors and they're kind of intimidated, maybe where I was, where what do I start? What do we do with the kids all outdoors? And it's just an encouragement to say, start with baby steps. You don't have to be perfect. Part of the reason we're looking at journaling is that's one thing that's pretty simple that you can take outside, do outside with very little prep, very little planning, and really very little knowledge about, the ecology of what's going on around you, and just be willing to learn alongside of the children. Now I just want to have a chance to get to know you a little bit. You don't have to share all of this, and you can speak to me. You can put it in the chat, whatever works for you, but whatever you think is most relevant to you right now. I mean, your name, kind of, where you're located, the age of your children. Some of these we've already covered one-on-one. Should be interesting to know whether you're currently using nature journals, and if you are, what's working for you, what's challenging, and what do you hope to get out of today?
Okay. Yeah. So I'm Luann, and I am out on Whidbey Island in Washington. The children that I work with in my preschool are ages 3 to 6. I have 4 children of my own, ranging from age 5 to 17. We are not currently using nature journals in the program for all students, but my own child in the program uses one. And so other children are very interested in it and would also like to participate in it. And that's why I'm here to learn how to introduce it and have it as part of the classroom for all students to have access to it, and not just my own kid. And so so that's kind of what has drawn me in here, is that I'm interested in figuring out a way to incorporate it into our classroom.
Well, it sounds like you already have a leg up in that the children already have interest in it, and you're not kind of saying, here's something new, kids, out of the blue. And so that's really helpful. All right, so I will keep that in mind as we go through the presentation, and feel free to stop me at any time, and you may have to stop me verbally. It's a little bit hard to like monitor the chat and look at you and monitor the slideshow. So it's just the two of us. Feel free to break in at any time and ask clarifying questions, or just tell me what you need, what would be helpful. Um, so um, you're already sold on the benefits of nature journals, as your own child already has them. So hopefully you've seen some of these benefits with your own child. But I'm going to go through them. What I see as the benefits of nature journals are, one, they're simple. I am all about simple. I want to spend my time with the children, um, observing their interests, observing their needs, coaching them through things, facilitating things, rather than spending all of my time, planning cute things, cutting up papers for them to do crafts. And that's the benefit of nature journals. Is you have the journal, you go out, it doesn't matter where you go, whether you've got some a campground like you have, a forest like I have, or whether it's just outside in the backyard or in the play yard of a traditional preschool. It's child-centered in that, yes, you can provide prompts, and we're going to talk about prompts and how to introduce things, but it's also their book and their journal, and they can choose what direction to go with it, and when to use it, how to use it. I've talked before about connections to many different disciplines. So, many adults in many different professions use journals. Writers use journals, scientists use journals, naturalists use journals, artists use journals, where they are maybe learning to observe the world. Right. And these are all things then that children can do, right? They're honing their observation skills by saying, here's what I'm looking at, and I'm going to capture it some way in my journal. They're learning to reflect on nature and the world, right? How is this making me feel? What did I see yesterday that's maybe different today? And how can I capture that in my journal? This is practice. It's practice for adults, and it can also be practice for children. So it's a way, obviously, when artists are using journals, and they are, practicing their sketches, practicing different shapes, different forms, how they're going to compose something. It's also the same thing for naturalists, the same thing for scientists, the same thing for writers, right? We're practicing our word choice. We're practicing vocabulary. We're practicing syntax and how something sounds when it's put together on a page. It's also a way for, again, all of these adult professions to gather ideas. So if you're a scientist and you're out there with your journal and you notice something, well, that could make you think of questions, which could then become a research idea, which is the same thing we're trying to do on a preschool level. There's a give and take with that journal, whether it's something that you're using to reflect on something you already know, or whether it's a way to come up with questions and be a springboard for other investigations that you are going to do in your early childhood program. It's flexible in that, you can use the nature journal to tie into pretty much anything that you are studying. Obviously, any type of science investigation you're doing, if you are studying trees, if you are studying the soil, it's really easy to think about how a nature journal could be connected to that. But you could also connect it to math. We've done a lot lately on shapes, and today the children were very interested in the different shapes they could find in trees, whether some of the branches had zigzag lines, whether some of the evergreen trees had triangles or cones with points at the top. And again, that's something that you can explore through a nature journal. All right, so I am going to hopefully step off of the slideshow here. That's where things get tricky, going in and out of the slideshow. But I want to talk about what you might choose as your journal. So just a question for you. What does your son's journal look like?
His is like almost like a leather cover, and then inside has like a 3-ring binder with sheets of paper. You can add more or take some out as you need to.
Yeah, so that's basically the two different things, and that's the way that I've done it in the past. Like, it sounds like yours maybe has the best of both worlds. Is that we've done the loose leaf, right? Adding in paper at a time, and we've also done the bound book. And I'm going to say there are advantages and disadvantages to each one when you're choosing. One of the advantages to this, when you're talking about a full class, is that it's cheap. It's much cheaper than a leather bound journal. What I've found is probably for younger children, having something where the pages go in and out is a little bit more developmentally appropriate for children, in that they can add the pages whenever they want. If you are thinking about wanting the journal to be in chronological order, because you want children to be able to go back and track changes in seasons or reflect on just their own noticings and how their observations and artwork have changed, this is the best way to get a chronological order, because once you give them this little book, it's very hard for them to, find the next page. And don't skip any pages, and make sure that that you're on the right page. And the other advantage of this, and you have the same issue, sure, is that you can change the pages. So depending on what type of paper you need. So I have one example, which is a child attempting to capture ice. We found ice crystals in the soil, and the kids were really excited about it. And I think this child has watercolors on it, but it's very difficult to draw ice on a white piece of paper. And so the advantage of this is you can put in whatever paper you want. And I also have, which is also very expensive, and I don't want the kids to go through it, I also have waterproof paper, which is great for Pacific Northwest, but I do not want to give the children a bound book of waterproof paper because I don't have $30 to spend on every child's journal. So I just have, a tablet, rip off the pages. I've taught the children how to hole punch the pages and add it to, so they can get whatever paper they want. It's also flexible if children want to do a rubbing or any other type of, not drawing. It's not bound in, so they can use the paper and add it to their journal. I'm going to be honest, though, that I don't use these anymore. Um, and although I miss them at times, I miss the loose leaf at times, and I do have these that I bought at Amazon. I think they end up being like a little bit over $1 a book if you buy them in a pack. So they're not as expensive. The biggest advantage to this is it feels like a book to the kids, and it feels really special, and it's their book. And so I've just learned to kind of deal with the fact that, the child I just showed you, who did the ice and then has skipped pages in their journal before they get to the next one. They've gone backwards. And we have the date written. And so I've just kind of made peace with that. The other disadvantage to this one, I know I'm saying all the disadvantages, and this is the one that I'm using, is that some children get into the quantity over quality. Right. It's a book, and I've got all of these pages to fill. Right. And so I'm just going to put something on each page. And so, like I said, I think if I were going to say preschool developmentally appropriate and what I think preschoolers can do, I would pick the loose leaf. For me, their joy at having their own book, and the fact that it's small enough that it's easier for them to transport into the forest kind of trumps the other ones, that I'm going to say, okay, well, if they can't do everything in order, then maybe that's just not where we are right now with that particular child in thinking about things in chronological order. And maybe that's not important to their journaling process. So those are the two main things. Decide what trumps things for you, and do that. All right. I am going to see if I can do a smoother job of heading back to the I think that was super smooth that time. Okay. And all right. So gonna go over a little bit of our journaling routine. So there are two ways that we use our journal. We do take our journals out as a group, and then we do have them available individually all the time for children to work with. Now, like I said, I do a very child-centered, very child-led program. So if we are doing this as a group, usually we will meet as a group, in our little clearing in the forest, and have a provocation, have a discussion, kind of, whether that's bringing up something that we've all been noticing in the forest, whether that's bringing up a prompt based on something else we've been discussing, but it's short. It's 1 or 2 minutes. Let the children have time to talk about things that they notice in the forest, and things that they wonder about. Children can do both. They can choose one or the other. I've just found that if we have a little bit of discussion ahead of time, it helps them choose what they're going to put in their nature journal. And then we have time for each child to work in their nature journal. And I always say that everything we do at my preschool is a choice. And so absolutely, there are times when a particular child may not to be into their nature journal that day. It's rare, because while things are a choice, if you make things interesting to the children and they've already got excited about what they are noticing, and then they're going to want to add it into their nature journal. But if they don't, that's okay. They're not doing the nature journal that's today, and that's fine. They already had the discussion. They got what they needed out of it. The other thing that you might find in the beginning, and we'll cover how to get over that, is that especially some of the 3-year-olds might be intimidated by the nature journal because they don't feel like they can draw. And so we'll get into a little bit later some alternatives to drawing, which will help children who might be a little bit hesitant to putting something in their nature journal. And then I always like to have a time for reflection, and that can come in different ways. That can come in, when you're done putting something in your nature journal, go find a friend. Tell them the secret thing that you found. What did you find that you think that no one else has seen? Or, what's really interesting in your nature journal? So it could just be as they finish up. It could be that when most children are finished, that, we're gathering together as a group. It's okay if you haven't finished yet. You'll have time to head back to your nature journal. But, as we've got some ideas in our nature journal. I just wanted to, meet as a group again to share, what we're seeing and see if other people are noticing the same things we are, or really that reflection could happen the next day. If people are all over the place in, different amount of times in their nature journals, and somebody wants to be there for 20 minutes and somebody took 30 seconds, it might be that your reflection is coming at the beginning of the next time you bring out your nature journals, or the next time you meet together as a group. So to me, I just kind of gauge where the group is, and there's no real science to when I do that reflection, but I do think it's important to have those three pieces to make sure you set up something, have them time to discuss and think, then have the journaling time, and then have the reflection time. And then, of course, our journals will always accessible to the children. And some children will come up and say, I want to write in my book. I'm like, that's great. Go get your book. Let me know if you need some help from me in terms of if you want to dictate anything, if you want me to write the date. And then we'll, you're welcome to use it at any time. So when I introduce the journals, and this might be the piece that is most relevant to what you are doing now, is that I choose a book that shows a child using a nature journal. And those are three possibilities on that slide for you. Winter is coming. There is a child who sits in a tree with a nature journal. The hike is 4 children, I think 3 or 4 girls, that go on a hike together, and each child has their own special skill that they bring to the hike. One child is the photographer, one child is the map reader, and one child documents their journey in a nature journal. And I like that one because it also shows how you can add photographs and actual pieces of nature collections in the nature journal. And then the nature journal backyard adventure is a child who connects with his father over their mutual love of journaling, and also gives some examples of both the child's journal and the one that the dad made when he was younger. And so I will usually start by reading the book and then, really focus in, did you notice, how were the children remembering all of the exciting things they were seeing in nature? And children will fill in, they were writing it down. I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if we all had our own books where we could remember everything that we are thinking and feeling and noticing about nature? Guess what? I've got a book for you. And then what we do on that first day, really, all we do is I hand out the books. I encourage the children to write their name on it, or I write their name on it. Like, this is your book. It's your book for the whole year. And, then we decorate the covers. And what we often do, and you can see that child in the picture doing it, is we just tape the we let the children go around and collect nature, pick things off the ground, I also let children pick one thing from each plant if it is living and they're picking it off the plant. And what we've settled on here is if you just use clear tape and the children just tape it on, as long as they cover the entire specimen, it keeps it green. And you don't have to press it or do anything special to it. We've also done where children have glued things onto their covers, and then I just put a sheet of contact paper on it. You have to make sure you press out all the bubbles in the contact sheet, again, to preserve it. We've done before, it depends on the group and what they're capable of, but if they are capable of drawing, we've done where they can draw on the cover. And that's pretty much all we do for that first session. Then the second session, and it says day 2, it doesn't have to be 2 consecutive days, is we really talk about what makes a good picture. So I don't know, did you happen to bring your favorite picture book with you?
No, I forgot to grab it.
Okay, well, I'll just kind of talk you through it. My picture books is a little different because it doesn't have colors. But usually what I have children do is I have them, I just say, go find, we're going to talk about how people make good pictures. And I say, go find your favorite picture book. And we have baskets of books that we bring into the forest with us, and then give them each time to find your favorite picture book, one that you really like the pictures. And then once you have your picture book, I say to the children, go through, find your favorite picture in that book. So you're just going to imagine it for me, unless you were able to grab something really quickly.
I can grab it. I know where it is. I think it's in my daughter's room right now, but I just forgot to grab it. But I can run down.
Yeah, it's up to you. But so I'll keep talking while you search for it. So what I have them do is I have them open up to a page where I say, find your favorite picture in this book. And then, we're not going to talk. We're going to use that same I notice, I wonder. It's a structure that we just use throughout our day in the preschool, because I always want to give the children think time before talk time, because then, well, frankly, I get better talk that way if I give them time to think. And I just say, now that you've found your favorite picture, take some time, look at the picture. Don't tell anybody anything, right? If you think of it, that's great. Put it in your head. Don't tell us yet. And what's good about that picture? And you might have to do some coaching through it, because again, these are 3, 4, 5-year-olds. And I've had children before, like, what's good about that picture? It has a tiger on it, and I like tigers. So then I say, okay, well, is that a good picture of a tiger? What did the artist do? What did the illustrator do to make that a good picture of a tiger? And they'll say, well, it looks like a tiger because it has orange and it has stripes. I'm like, okay, well, so good pictures sometimes look like the actual object, almost like you're using your crayons to take a photograph of it. And so sometimes you have to walk them through a little bit of what that picture is. So have you found your book? I'm going to put you on the spot. If you haven't found the book. Okay.
No, I did. Sorry, I said yes, but I forgot to unmute myself.
That's okay. Did you find her? Okay. Yes, that is a good one. That is a good one for our discussion too. And you found your favorite picture. So I am gonna put you on the spot. So, what makes it a good picture?
For me, what makes it a good picture is that it has such a variety of colors that, if you actually read the story, it represents different things to different people, but just looking at it, it isn't the traditional colors you would see in our own space, but love that it represents all different things with the colors that they use.
Yeah, and so in child language, that might be, and what we often end up with is good pictures have more than one color.
Yeah.
And good pictures can make you feel something. Right. So we have, they represent objects, right? So you might want to do a picture where it really looks like the object. Or you might want to do a picture that makes somebody feel something. We always do end up with multiple colors. That's something that a good artist does. Now, I wanted to throw a monkey wrench into it. So I picked a book that only has black and white pictures. But what I like about this picture and what I think the artist does well is that it captures movement. That sometimes it's difficult on a piece of paper to show movement. And how can you do that as an artist? And I can see kind of the tree pointing to the child, and I know that the tree's branch is moving. And I've done this, oh my goodness, for, I don't know, longer than my child has been alive. So let's say it's been over 20 years that I have done this with children, and it may be my bias poking into it, but those are always the 4 things that we end up with. Maybe sometimes we only end up with 3 of them, but it's always along that lines of multiple colors, movement, feelings, and actually representing what you see. And that brings up a good point that we do at some point get into the difference between science pictures and art pictures. And so if you are taking your journal out and you want to be a scientist, then you're going to use the real colors that you see, because you're going to want to remember that later for your experiments, for your observations, whatever you're doing. If you are taking out your journal and you are being an artist, then you have freedom with the colors. And so sometimes I will ask the children, are you making an art picture today or a science picture? And then what colors do you think you need for that? And, sometimes depending on what we're doing, I may guide one and say, I think we're making a science picture today. And again, not everybody's going to do that because that isn't where they are. So now I wanted to give us just a minute or so, because we are, just the 2 of us, and it doesn't make sense to take a lot of time not talking to each other. But it's great that you are outside. So I want us to pick something. Do you have your art? I should have asked. Do you have your art medium with you? Something you should. Okay. So pick something that is in both of our environments that we are going to just take a second to do, a quick 1 or 2 minute representation. So, what would you like to do? And I will go with what you're doing. So we could pick the trees. We could pick, because I can see a tree behind you, and I can see lots of people behind me. We can decide whether we want it to be a deciduous tree or an evergreen tree, because I've got both. We can do soil. I've got rocks around me. What do you think?
Probably just pick some trees. I have cedar trees here.
Oh, I have cedar trees. Okay. All right, that works.
Okay.
And what art medium are you using? Because I'll use something different.
I have colored pencils.
Okay.
No, you may not have an ice cream sandwich or a popsicle. I'm going to mute again.
All right, so we'll just take a minute or 2 to kind of draw what we see. All right. So I know you probably didn't finish. I didn't finish. I like a quick sketch here. I do think one more thing that sometimes children bring up is they talk about background. That the pictures don't exist in isolation. So can I see yours? I'm not grading it. I just because like I can tell you mine is partially done. Okay. Okay. Um, so we have very different representations, obviously based on choosing what we chose to do. One, we're different people. And two, choosing what we chose to represent, right? So you have pencils, which make it much easier to make lines. So I realized that I have oil pastels in front of me, and that's my favorite thing to work with, but probably not the best thing for capturing pine needles, right? So one of the things that I do with children is I want them eventually, and this isn't something that they do in the beginning, it may not even be something that they do that first year with you, because you have the same thing where kids, come multiple years. Is that, I want children to experiment. I mean, my background, art museum background. So I want children to experiment with different kinds of art mediums. And I want them to eventually be able to choose a medium based on the feeling or the science that they want to capture in their picture. And so like we just discovered, your medium is going to guide your drawing in some way. Last week I asked the children, I had available colored pencils and the oil pastels for the children. And I said, you get to choose. You get to choose. And we talked a little bit beforehand about, why would you choose a pencil? Why would you choose the oil pastels? And yours and my examples were great, what the kids came up with. And I honestly thought that the children were going to all pick the oil pastels just because they're fun. But really, most of the children picked the pencils, and all of the children picked what matched what they were doing. The one child who picked the oil pastels was doing a leaf. And obviously, the oil pastels, I usually introduce those to children for the first time in the fall when we are getting those leaves that change colors, because when it helps the children to look very closely at the leaves to say, how do we know where the green ends and the yellow begins? Or maybe you have brown and orange and green all in the same leaf, and where are the edges? Are there exact edges, or are those colors blending into each other? So it's a good way for me to talk about the properties of the specific art medium that we're using, along with some bit of science about what we're observing. So, similarly, when I introduce charcoal pencils, I try to introduce it when the children are talking about something that has shades of gray. So if we're talking about a late fall, early winter sky here in the Pacific Northwest, you are probably getting a lot of shades of gray. Sometimes we talk about the soil, which is generally shades of brown and not shades of gray. But the idea is learning how to use a charcoal pencil is difficult for young children, but it's great fine motor work because they really need to think about the amount of pressure they're putting on the pencil. The lighter the amount of pressure, the lighter your lines and the more blending, the more pressure you put on the pencil, the darker your line and the crisper the line is. And so I would find a way, again, that introduces it so that I'm talking about the properties of the art medium as well as the properties of whatever nature we are examining. We already talked about pencils, but also kids love to use pens. And pencils, color pencils, you can use them for coloring things in. You really can't with pens. So the idea with pens is to capture something where you are really looking at lines. Maybe you're looking at the veins in the leaf rather than looking at the colors. Maybe you're looking at a piece of bark and the texture on the bark. So when you are looking at different types of lines, or maybe this is good for how my children are talking about the shapes of trees right now. Watercolors are another good choice when you don't need an exact edge. The watercolors are going to blend into each other, so it's good if you want the children to think about gradations of color. Are all the leaves green? Yeah, maybe they are in the summer. Are they all the same kind of green? And how are we going to blend the colors to really convey the different types of green that we have? So I will, every time I initially introduce a different art material, I will talk to children about how to use it, the benefits of it, and try to tie it into something that we're noticing at the time. Again, children may or may not do it that way, and we just go with it. Now, we did talk before about how some children may not be there. We have a lot of pre-writers in preschool. We also have a lot of pre-drawers. So different ways that you can collect things that don't involve drawing. So this is a child who remembered how we had decorated our cover and wanted to collect some different shapes of leaves in her journal and remembered the process that we had done. And so that was her way of capturing something in her nature journal. Texture rubbings are a lot of fun for children. You can also use nature to make marks. It says to draw, but really to make marks. So that if you are taking a dandelion, for example, and just putting the marks on the page, you know, you captured yellow and you captured the dandelion in your journal just by marking your journal with that dandelion. Rolled up pieces of grass work, leaves work, twigs work because they will spread dirt on your journal. The dirt actually works. We have done before where we've taken photographs. The disadvantage of the photographs is that the kids don't get to put it in their journal right away. So they will take photographs with my iPhone. I will print them out. I take little notes about whose photograph is whose. And then they add it to their nature journal the next day. We don't do too much of that. Like I said, sometimes it's difficult for the children to remember what they did. But with older children, with the kids that are more on the 4-5 range, that helps. Sometimes we measure and record. The kids are really into we're really into trees right now because we're seeing the changes in them. They're really into trying to figure out how a tree grows, and we haven't gotten there yet, but the kids were talking, well, like, well, how do you know if a tree is growing? So, well, you can stand next to it and then stand next to it another time and see if the tree, you know, is still bigger than you. Like, okay, but what if you grow? So we haven't quite gotten into using something else that doesn't change, a stick, or, you know, if you want to get into rulers, tape measures as measurements. And so there are different ways that don't require any drawing. We can get into science and math prompts. So obviously you can tie nature journals to anything you are studying, and that is why I love them. So if you are studying math, take out your nurture journals and you can find and draw shapes in the leaves like that one child did, in the flowers, in clouds. One child did last week, where you can see that he also has footprints all over his nature journal, in that he was studying the soil, and he dug a nice hole in the soil. And on this page, he found a piece of leaf in the soil. When he dug deep enough under the ground, he found a crack in the soil. And these are great ways also that can then lead into, he drew in another 3 or 4 children into digging and seeing what they could find under the soil. And so that gives me an idea of saying, okay, maybe this is a whole group thing. Maybe now we'll do some investigations of soil because we started it in our nature journal, and now we can go off the nature journal because that's an interest of yours, and do some more things outside of the nature journal. So the idea is it's a back and forth. You can use the journal to reinforce things that you are investigating otherwise, or you can use the nature journal, like we talked about adults do in the beginning, as ideas for further exploration. Okay, so now a little bit of time just for you to weigh in, is, what are you and your children investigating now? And, what are your ideas? Or if you have questions for me about, what my ideas might be on what you're investigating and how could you use it as a nature journal prompt or tie it to your nature journals.
So this week specifically, we've been studying the red currant plant because it flowered this week in our classroom space.
Yeah. You
So
have
we
the same
actually
thing, right? The kids are interested in
harvested.
everything that's starting as spring.
Yeah. And so last week we did a whole ritual on waking up spring. And then this week spring is now awake, and then we've harvested the red currant, and then we made pancakes over the fire this week. So they're really into looking at nature as a way to feed our bodies and a way for us to connect with it in a different way. So that's kind of what we've been working on, really talking about and investigating and looking at the things that are blooming right now, or the things that are growing right now. How could we have best practices around harvesting them? How do we take best care of them? Like we talk about the red currant, although the flowers are edible, if we pick all the flowers, then the berries won't come out later in the summer. So a lot of that type of stuff. So I could definitely see, like, obviously just painting the flower, an image and stuff itself. And then they could do a type of measuring to figure out, we could do counting how many flowers are on there today and then how many flowers are on there next week. And then measuring how big the bush is getting and things like that. So all that scientific stuff.
I think it might be interesting to see, to just open up a discussion too, to say, how do you capture taste in a journal? I mean, that's
Okay.
one thing to think about. Colors, right? How do you capture taste in a piece of artwork? If something tastes yummy to you, what color is that? If something is just so, what color is that to you? And they might say it's green because
Right.
because I don't like broccoli and it's green like broccoli. It just would be an interesting direction to go with it, of trying to capture senses in a nature journal. Again, it depends on your kids, but since it sounds like you're talking about, food and nurturing the body, it'd be interesting to tie it in a little bit more to the body, right? Again, smells, capturing texture, sensations.
Okay. Yeah, we've been doing that a little bit in our sit spots. So when we give them prompts in our sit spots, but that would be very similar to doing it in a journal as well.
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
giving them art mediums to do it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And this is a great thing, right, to mix and match, because you
Yeah.
mentioned sit spots, so bring the journals into the sit
Right.
spot, right?
Mhm.
And you've got more extensions for the sit spots as well.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
Mm. All right, so I kind of rushed through the ends. I don't know why, it just took us a while. And so you know, what questions I didn't even, do you want me to, let me do this really quickly, I thought it was at the end. Literacy and social emotional learning. So if you want to tie in literacy to it, I talked earlier about taking dictation, including a date and location to label, or any sort of labels on the journals. Some children will get into putting, but it's few. By the time that they're 5, they might want to put in an F for flower or some other types of invented spelling in their journals. Like I said, I do encourage reflection, and that is going back and rereading and revisiting their entries when we're sharing it with each other. That's a community building. That's also talking to other people about how nature made you feel. And so you can tie into, if you make that the focus of either your group discussion beforehand with the I notice, I wonder, or your reflection afterwards, you can also tie in literacy and social emotional learning. Okay, sorry, that was super quick because we were running out of time. But do you have questions?
No, I'm actually excited like this. So part of me, like we do a lot of these things already, but not just directly into a nature journal. But I could see how if we did it as a loose leaf type of format, they could sit at our table with our art mediums and our prompts, do what they need to do, and then when it dries, instead of just sending it home with the parents for it to just get lost wherever it goes, we keep it and put it in their journal. And at the end of the year, then the parent gets, the year's worth of stuff. So I can see how that would be a
which is a
good.
nice record. My only thing would be, if you do have them always accessible to the children, that you let parents know that they're always accessible to
Yeah, to the
them
parents.
as well, or encourage the children as they come in the morning each day, right, to share with the parents. Just because it's helpful for parents to not wait until the end of the year to know everything that you're doing. And we have
But
so
part of
few
me
things
is like, when we sit down to do a art project or something, the kids do 2 or 3 or 4 pages. And we would just pick, one to put into their journal
that's
type
a
thing.
good idea. Yeah, pick the one you want for your journal and then send the rest. I love that idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a lot of great ideas. And yeah, I'm excited to put that together to add to our program.
Great.
Yeah, I can't think of any questions off the top of my head, but
well, that's okay. If you come up with them later, you can email me, you can find me and let me know. Thank you for being one-on-one and being on the spot with me. Hello back there. How's the bike riding going? So yeah, thank you for being game and being on the spot here to do everything. Yeah. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of this beautiful sunlight.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye.